following is a special presentation of the Sports Journey Network. Sports Journey.
Welcome to the Breakdown, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Dujunnea Bland, and I am joined by my co-host, Carita Parks. How are you doing tonight, Carita?
Doing good. Busy, but I am doing well. Always ready to talk some sports.
And ladies and gentlemen, she is super busy. Has been busy for about the last 2 weeks. I know that she likes to be humble, but I'm not letting her get away with that tonight. She has some exciting things going on. You want to tell them about that, Carita?
Sure. So 2 weeks ago, I launched my own sports media platform, Double Take Sports, and my tagline is bringing you another side of the story. And that is essentially the essence of what my brand is. There's a lot of untapped stories in sports, and I really wanted a platform to tell those stories, but also with my background in PR, there's always something sports related going on that I can tie into that. So
Absolutely.
that's really what I want to use my platform for, those two things, like tapping into those untold stories and also just finding some different unique angles. And of course, your regular sports news will be there too. So I'm really excited about it. A Black woman with her own sports platform. There's very few of those. So that's also another reason. And I'm just looking forward to growing it and it being overall successful. But, I'm excited that I'm just adding this to my portfolio, not taking anything away, just continuing to grow. So that's part one. And then this week, I launched CaritaParks.com, which is my hub site because I have some different brands. And for me, I want people to understand that everything I do goes hand in hand. I'm not just sporadically doing things out here. So CaritaParks.com brings that all together. You can learn everything about me on the PR side as well as the sports side. I also have samples of work and interviews. And you can also go to Double Take Sports from that site, and you can also go to Parks PR from that site. Whatever someone is interested in, they can continue to further explore.
See, she's got y'all all hooked up. If you forget the websites, no problem. They're all there. And I was just excited. I've been excited seeing the new things that you've been coming out with. It's just phenomenal to see. And I have a good friend. Her name's Latasha Briscoe, and she does a lot of party planning and setting things up and doing these elegant events. And
Mm-hmm.
to see you doing these types of things, it's like it's another person that is motivating Black women and women in general to say, hey, you have an idea, go get it. You can do it. And it's amazing to watch. And I look forward to getting an opportunity to be able to participate in these new ventures that you have come across and debuted for the world. It's super awesome. I was cheesing yesterday.
Thank you so much. And it's been a long time. I've been working on these things for a while. And so the timing just ended up being perfect. And so just to be able to roll those out after so much time, it's a relief, but the work continues. And yes, of course, I look forward to folding you in.
Man, it's going to be fun. And after releasing all this great news, we have to go talk about the Washington football team. And if
Always
they
giving us.
haven't dealt with enough, there was more last Friday. And when we talk about this and what happened last Friday, if you were under a rock, Mr. Derrius Guice, now former Washington football team running back Derrius Guice, was charged or brought in for domestic violence. And when the reports came out, the key word that stood out to me was strangulation and assault and battery. And I'll be the first to tell you, when he was drafted and the character issues came out during the draft, people who follow me know how I feel about that when it comes out. These things come out during those times with certain athletes. And I was like, you know what? Give the guy a chance. And when he came here, he was very good with the fans, very candid. Um, Even late spoke about how well spoken he was and a good young man he was.
Yeah.
And here we are. So, do you believe that was just a facade?
That's funny because I was asked the same question the other day. It feels like it. To me, just the accusations, that's not your first time putting your hands on a woman. And 3 separate incidents.
Yep.
That's the other part of this. So you didn't learn your lesson at all. And like you said, the accusations, all of them were alarming. But the fact that they pulled out strangulation, and was before we knew like all of the details, I was like, he must have really been choking someone pretty badly for them to pull that out as a single charge. And then it later came out that he choked his girlfriend till she was unconscious.
Yes.
So to your point, he came here. He was a class act. He was a fan favorite. He would often go bowling with the fans. Those character issues came up before the draft, but they weren't very specific.
Right.
So to your point, it was hard to really say what the issue was. And he had a clean record since he got here. But I do believe that maybe he was trying to clean up his act. You know, he essentially got a second chance because those accusations could have made him slide further than the second round. So maybe he was trying to clean up his act a little bit. But part of it was also, especially when he first got here, more than likely PR move. Like you got to show that you are walking a straight line.
Yep.
And he continued that, but clearly he was someone else.
And it showed at the most inopportune time because I can tell you right here, and I don't want to hear. I saw fans talking about, well, it was allegedly, and these are just charges, and innocent till proven guilty. You know, those are all the same things that deter women from coming forward. So you can miss me with that. I'm going to be very stern on that. You can miss me with that when you come out and that's your go-to to try to push your narrative. It's garbage. Okay? This can't be tolerated.
Sometimes it can be innocent until proven guilty, but there's 3 separate incidents, different months of the year. So it's hard for me to believe that this didn't happen. And from my understanding and reading up on this, and the Washington Post had a really good article about the specific charges from the docket. This person allegedly took photos too. And they clearly, I do believe that they had enough evidence. And I think personally that the Washington football team knew the specifics before they made their decision. A lot of people are like, oh, they didn't know. No, I think they did know before
I'm with you on that.
And they acted upon it as they should.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sorry. I'll ask you first. Do you feel like he was made an example of in this incident?
Yes, but for good reason. I mean, yes, he was made an example because this is on the heels. This is really the first active decision that Ron Rivera has had to make that backs up what he said as far as changing the culture.
Absolutely.
This is an incident you couldn't let slide, especially because if you did, then you look like you don't mean what you said. And this is the same Washington franchise, right? But at the same time, he put himself in a position to be made an example of.
Indeed. I don't disagree with the move. It had to be made given the circumstances that this team is in from the other allegations of the 15 women being harassed.
Exactly.
and all those allegations and what goes with that. So they had to do that. Now, my next question is to you: does it set a precedence for the rest of the league? Because we know how lax the rest of the league has. I mean, do we need to go down the laundry list of players that have been caught on tape doing this type of stuff, and then they get hired in 2 and 3 weeks?
So to answer your question, no, I don't think it sets a precedent for the rest of the league. It should, but
Right.
it won't. They have too long of a track record of things not being fair. Washington had no choice but to let Guice go, especially to your point of all the allegations that just came out with women. Even before that, with this name change going on, there's just too much going on in this franchise right now. They couldn't let that slide. But if it was another franchise that was much stronger, I don't know, let's just say the Eagles right now, because they just were the first ones to come to my mind. And they did just have the Deshaun Jackson thing.
Right.
I believe that they may have let that person stick around a little longer.
Agreed.
Because they didn't really have any huge issues brewing with their organization overall. They have a fairly good track record, Super Bowl champs, you know. Now, maybe they would eventually let the person go once it was very clear, like, oh yeah, they did that. But then again, maybe they wouldn't have. So I think it just really does depend on the player, unfortunately, and the franchise.
Right.
But it should be a uniform rule across the league of how these are handled.
It definitely should, because we've seen it before. It hasn't been handled properly at all. It just seems like we just gloss over it, and because the player has talent, and he can contribute and be a big contributor, it all of a sudden doesn't matter. But if you're third down on the depth and you're just a punt returner or a guy just fill in, all of a sudden they can pluck you off and send you on your way because you're not as valuable. It shouldn't matter.
And I mean, Guice, he is an important factor, but he was injured 2 seasons in a row. We didn't know what we were going to get this season. Like, was he going to be healthy the whole season?
Right.
And then the running back position is crowded.
Very.
So he kind of made the decision for the team.
Basically, I'm going to tell you, Scott Turner had a difficult decision, but I'm going to be quite blunt. Bryce Love was taking his job. Bryce was taking that job.
More than likely.
I mean, he hadn't been on the field enough. And then there's some things that he was still having some lingering issues with the knee. And I know when your job's on the line, you're not going to allow, whether it's something wrong or not, it's a go or blow type of deal. And you hope that it sticks and nothing happens, or you're going to get injured and you're going to lose your job anyway. And I really feel like either he wouldn't have stayed out there long enough, or when it all came down to it, when they saw what was going on and Bryce Love got a chance to hit that field, he wasn't going to be able to just to keep that spot.
Yeah, well, now it's a much easier
situation.
Now,
before we close this stuff out with Washington decided to have no fans in the stands. And that was announced this week. Right decision?
It's the right decision. It's still not safe with COVID-19. It's hard in those situations, you know, fans get excited and you don't know that they're going to actually abide by the rules of 6 feet apart or the face mask. It's very hard to control. But also with the team going through this name change, it actually buys them some time to make the decisions they need to make the changes that they need to make around the stadium. And also maybe there'll be some newer energy coming into next season if we can have fans, crossing my fingers and hoping so, around this new name. And some of that anger about the change would have also subsided by then. So I think it's a good decision for them.
Yeah, I agree.
Not the same without fans. I mean, you know, that is just what it is. But when you look at the circumstances and just all the other factors for them, it makes sense.
Well, according to the jokesters, they didn't have that many fans in the stands anyway.
I know. But they did have still other teams fans. So
Right.
we would have still had to consider them.
Exactly. That is true. And with that, guys, we're going to close out this segment with Washington. And talking about the Guice situation, we're going to get on to some more happier times. And we're going to talk, well, slightly happy. We're going to talk some WNBA. We're going to talk some Mystics. We're going to talk about some of the top teams in the WNBA when we come back from the break. And we are back. And the WNBA is in full swing. And when you look at the standings, there is a huge disparaging gap there between the top teams and those who are not doing so well. And the Mystics are one of those teams, sadly. And we talked about this before the season started, Carita. We know that they're missing Deladon. We know that they're missing Charles. Their bench is a problem. And, obviously COVID, people opting out and things like that. And rightfully so. I mean, there are some concerns there, but they don't have a bench. And then they couldn't fill that bench. Tonight, they lose 81-64 for their sixth. Yes, that's 6 straight losses after going 3-0 in the beginning. They are now 0-6 in their last 6. Do you believe that the lack of bench is the problem, or has the team's play around them in the league started to gel and pick up, and they haven't really moved with the rest of those top teams in the league?
I think their bench is definitely probably the bigger problem, because in the beginning they did go 3-0 and they were essentially a new team who were just playing with each other. So we didn't see that as an issue for 3 games. But now that we're playing more games, and yes, other teams are picking up and gelling, the Mystics were so successful last season because their bench was deep. They had depth. So anyone they put in there could pick up the slack. They don't have that this season, and it's really starting to now show. The transition happened kind of quickly, but we're seeing it, and I think it's because the season's going on and they're getting more tired, they're more worn out. It's an intense, situation. So I think we're starting to see it catch up with them, and they just don't have the replacements that they had last year. They don't have that depth, and I think that that's definitely really hurting them, because that was one of the biggest keys to their success.
And see, I noticed that as well in especially in these last 6. It seems like the top 3, their big 3, was really getting it done. Even some unsung heroes who may not be called upon to have that load were really putting their best foot forward, and they were turning out people's lights in the first 3 games. And now that those big 3 and those individuals that don't necessarily play those many minutes, and they don't have the people behind them to really come in and keep up that pace, if they get and come in a little slow, they can't catch up. And that showed tonight. I mean, only 64 points.
Yeah, they are just Coach Tebow, I can tell you, in every post game, his words have not been good. And a lot of coaches, when they lose, they try to clean it up. Yeah. No, he said everything from that was terrible basketball to, I think he said he had been with the Mystics for 10 seasons, I believe. He said that one of the games, maybe a game or 2 ago, was the worst he's ever seen. So he's not happy whatsoever. with this at all. And I can understand why it's probably frustrating, especially when you're coming off of a championship. But you also have to factor in those injuries now, too, because Tiana Hawkins, she got injured pretty early. She is back, but then Ariel Powers got injured. And so she's out. And Ariel really is a lot of energy. Now, they were still losing with Ariel Powers, but she's still got like this energy that you need out there on the court. And they feed off of her energy. So her not being there is a miss, too. It's just like, this is definitely not the same Mystics team.
It's definitely not. And it's definitely not the same team that started out the first 3 games.
Yeah.
The Mystics are 8th right now with a 3-6 record. But you're like, oh, that's a bad record. But there's
Some bad
3 or 4 teams with 3-6 record. The
Yeah.
Dream are 2-7. The Liberty are 1-8. There's 4 or 5 solid teams, with the Storm running away with it so far with an 8-1 record.
The
I don't
Storm
know if the
definitely
Mystics can hang
strong.
on.
I think that if they were to even turn it around, it would still be a tough road at this point. They've lost 6 in a row, and they haven't found out how to win yet.
Right.
And that's a problem. We also need to see more out of Emma Mieseman. I don't know what's going on with her. She's just not contributing enough. I'm not going to say
Right.
she's just not contributing enough. You know, Baisha Hines Allen has really stepped up. You got Ariel Atkins, but like when it really comes down to it, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's just not deep enough. I mean, that's all I can really
Right.
name that are your really strong scorers. And you need more than that. Like, they're really, really missing Elena, Natasha Cloud,
Big
know,
misses.
Tina Charles. We don't know what she would have been, but they definitely could have used her. I think they would have been more competitive. The bench still wouldn't have been as deep as last season, but they definitely would have been more competitive. Because like you said, these records are not all that great.
No.
The Storm has the strongest record. You know, the Aces and the Lynx we got 6-2, and the Sky are 6-3. I mean, that's okay.
Right. And the Sparks tonight, they
It's
weren't
pretty
81 point, 81 to 64 type of a team there. They're not the Storm at all.
no.
So it's going to be interesting how the season plays out. But
Definitely.
I definitely have noticed Coach's demeanor in your post game press conference posts, and he seems to be at wit's end because he doesn't have enough to work with to give them a good combination that can give people equal rest and allow them to be fresh and continue to attack and be strong on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, and he's getting to a point where he really doesn't have answers for us as to what they could do differently or what's happened. You know, so he's just as frustrated as everyone, and it's definitely a completely different vibe. But they surprised me with being 3-0, and it actually gave me some hope. Like, oh, okay, maybe it won't be as bad as I thought it would be. And the only reason I was thinking that it wasn't going to be as bad is a strong word, but it wasn't going to be as successful as last year is because the players, their energy was different. Like last year, when I went to media day, it was like, run it back. Like, we're ready, run it back, do this. That energy was not there this year.
Do you feel like COVID has a little bit to do with that as well? Because, I mean, we look at them, and I know a lot of the fans look at them and, they're athletes, but they're away from their families too. They have worries and concerns too. So they're playing the game away from their families. The team is not 100%, and they're dealing with that adversity. You think that has a little bit to do with it?
You know, at first I was thinking maybe, but when I think about it, in talking to them, a lot of those women play overseas. You know, the WNBA is very notorious for the women, after they finish their seasons, they go overseas and they play internationally. And they were saying that in the beginning that this experience reminded them of that. So it wasn't as difficult for them because they're used to being far away from their families. Now, for those who don't play internationally, it's probably a little bit more difficult, but I think the WNBA is a league that has a lot of players that go overseas. So they actually are more equipped to deal with this situation.
Good. That's a good nugget that I did not realize. And that will be good information for the fans as well. So we learned something new together, guys. And this
I
Saturday.
don't know that either. It's just from listening to the interviews and talking to them that came up, and like mostly when they first got there, because obviously a lot of people were asking, how
Right.
is it? You miss your family, and of course they miss their families, but they're kind
Yeah.
of used to that type of situation.
Right, right. Well, the Mystics, after tonight's L, will play Saturday, August 15th. They are the first game of Saturday at 12 p.m. They will be on court two, and they will be playing the Las Vegas Aces. So we'll see if they can kind of rebound and try to scrape, scrap, and try to get a win and try to turn this six-game losing streak around.
Can I just say one thing before we transition?
Yeah.
So the teams that are beating the Mystics, you hear them in the background like celebrating, like screaming. And I'm thinking to myself, but you're not beating the world champion Mystics.
No.
You know what I mean?
They're wounded.
They're acting like they're beating the world champion Mystics. No, you're not. So
They can
it's
thank
just
COVID.
like calm down just a little bit. Like congratulations, it is a win.
Right.
But like the celebrations that I hear in the background is like a little bit
It's a little
more like,
much.
oh, we just beat the Mystics. But it's not the same team, guys.
Nah. Folks need to simmer down on that one.
All the way down.
Well, when we come back from this break, we're going to talk about the NBA. And boy, that NBA is hot. Like Dame Dollar?
Hot, hot.
Hot. And we'll discuss it when we come back. And so the NBA, after the restart, I mean, if you can't enjoy this basketball, then I don't know what to tell you. Um, the NBA bubble has been exciting, and people who know me know I don't watch too many regular season games. I become disinterested because there's just not a lot of competition. And even sometimes at the end of the season, which they were, it's still not that competitive because people feel like, okay, we're already shooting. We're not going to drop out of the playoff race. If we move a place down, it's not that big a deal. We're in the playoffs. We're going to rest up until then. Can't do that here. And now we have the eighth seed in the Western Conference available. And I said it a week ago. Portland Trail Blazers are on fire. And all they have to do is win. And they're playing the Brooklyn Nets. Do you think Dame Dollar gets his Trailblazers into the playoffs?
Dame is on one right now, and I think that he can get his team into the playoffs. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. I am here for the Carmelo comeback story
I am
as well.
too. I am too. Absolutely. I mean, the guy he looks small, he's balling, he's playing his role is what I like the most. And that's something I think he had to come to terms with on his own. A lot of people were trying to tell him that, but man, he's a competitor. And it takes guys a little time to figure out, hey, I'm not where I used to be. Like Jordan, make that adjustment and play within the confines of what you can do best now. And he's doing an excellent job of that right now.
I absolutely agree. They have that juice right now, and I see it being a bit difficult to stop them right now.
Look,
And I don't know who did something to Dame, but
he
he
is
is
just
playing like
ridiculous.
he is trying to prove something right now. And I love it. I'm with you. Like this bubble basketball to me, I've been a basketball fan, but it hasn't been that exciting in years, if I'm going to be honest.
That's honest.
This is to me the most excited I've been about a playoff situation or just basketball period. It's just a completely different vibe to me. Everybody was worried about the no fans and just the situation. They've stayed healthy. The whole no fans thing is different, but it's not crazy. There's still noise. So I like it.
I do too. I like the virtual fans as well.
Hmm.
Maybe one day I'll try to get in on that because I think it's kind of fun. But the virtual fans are cool. I like the crowd noise. It's great, but the energy of these players is great. The NBA deserves a huge round of applause for getting this right. Um, you don't have any positive tests. The NBA players deserve credit for following the rules, understanding what's at stake here, and doing what's necessary to get a job done. And they definitely have done everything right outside of all the other leagues at this point.
Yeah, and to that point, I am curious, will their undefeated record continue once families start to come in?
Distractions, distractions, distractions.
Or I don't know what the rules are. Like, are the families getting tested every single day? I
See,
don't
I'm
know.
not sure, and I'll have to look into that, but I think that would be something that they would want to do.
So if they did that, then we can probably be okay. But, I don't know if the families are going to have the same rules as the players or if the
Right.
families are going to feel like they have the same rules as the players. So we'll see if that changes anything. But so far, so good as far as the teams that have been there so far. The Wizards were in the bubble. They played today and they had to go home immediately after post game. Like, so they're not playing any games with anyone straggling around
Right.
or COVID being an issue. So.
Yeah, and they've done an excellent job with that. And to finish this out, if Portland wins, obviously they're in. Um, if they don't win, then the Phoenix Suns are in. And I'm gonna tell you right now, they're balling. But I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
tell you, the Lakers don't would rather see the Suns. They don't want to see Portland. It's
That's what
one
I
and
want.
done.
That's what I want. I want that Portland Lakers because, like you said, the Lakers don't want to see Portland. As much as the Suns have been balling, I think that they will run into some teams that will cause them some issues
Yes,
moving forward.
especially in
Portland,
that upper bracket
yeah,
that they're in.
Portland too, but I feel like Portland can take them. I
Exactly.
I'm the type of person who likes the upset. I don't like the obvious. And right now, the obvious is the
Lakers.
Lakers win the championship, right?
My Lakers.
Oh, sorry. Well, I am all about the upset. So, but I do personally think the Portland Lakers matchup will be very intriguing.
It's going to be electric, but I'm taking Portland. And when you look at this top bracket, in the bottom half of that bracket, you have the Houston and Oklahoma City Thunder. If Portland, which I believe Portland will get past LA, those two teams are not a problem for Portland at all. Now you look at the bottom half of that bracket in the Western Conference, you have the Denver Nuggets and Utah Jazz as a matchup 3 and 6. And then you have the Clippers and Dallas. The only problem that Portland's going to have, the Clippers. And the Lakers
That's
going to have a
okay.
problem with the Clippers.
That's okay though. We want to see it.
I do. I really do. The way Dame's playing right now, I definitely want to see it. I definitely want to see. As a fan, on the fan side of me, I do not want to see the Lakers play Portland. because I know it's over. I think it's one and done for them. But because I would like to see that Western Conference Finals matchup between Dame Dollar and the Trailblazers and the Clippers.
It would be great. And let's just be real. Like Dame, he's been trying to get to that place for a long time. Like they've come close, haven't been able to quite get over that hump. So, he deserves his flowers, as the people say.
Absolutely.
I would love to see that because it would have come out of nowhere, to be honest. Nobody would have expected that. And the funny thing is, I said everybody will think the bubble is a wonderful idea if the Lakers win because that's who everyone expects. Everybody will think it's a terrible idea if a team that nobody would have ever thought was going to win wins. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I just think that would be very exciting if Portland was in the mix.
I agree with you.
I'm not like a Portland fan or anything, but I mean, you just can't deny the determination right now.
No. And quickly, we'll go over to the Eastern Conference.
Which is
I'm gonna tell you. No, I don't see a Eastern Conference team that makes it to the NBA Finals that are going to hang with any of those teams on the Western side. Milwaukee's not ready. Orlando definitely ain't ready. Yeah. Miami definitely ain't ready. Indy ain't ready.
Sixers struggling.
The only team, and I think it's Boston in the final. Serge will be happy. Our teammate Serge will be happy about that. But I believe that Boston will be in the finals. But there ain't nobody else on this side of the bracket that I'm concerned about. Not Toronto, not the Nets, not the 76ers.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I think would be a more interesting. Let's just go with our whole Portland scenario. Let's say Portland slides in there and they make it to the finals. I'm just trying to figure out what would be the more interesting matchup. After Giannis headbutted Mo Wagner, that's a maturity issue to me. You're not mature enough. Not to say you can't win, but you are showing me a lack of maturity that is needed in the finals.
Absolutely.
So I could be wrong. I would say I'm trying to figure out what would be maybe the Raptors. But the Celtics could slide in there too. But
I think it's Celtics Raptors for the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
But I think the Celtics get into the finals.
Okay.
And I'm going Portland Clippers for the West. I don't believe if Portland gets in that LA is getting out of the first round. It's out of here in the first round.
I agree because also LA wasn't playing that hot in the bubble.
Nope.
So we see some weaknesses there, or at least I did.
Major weaknesses. Mm-hmm. Too many inconsistencies.
But this game is close. It's close right now. I have it on. Portland is playing the Nets. It's currently 33-36. It's been kind of close like this. 33 Portland, Brooklyn 36. It's been kind of close like this since the game started. So it's interesting.
It is. And that's what's been interesting about the bubble is that a lot of the hot teams have stayed hot, but then there's those times where those hot teams come into situations where, like we are right now tonight, they're playing the Nets. It's a close game. But Dame Dolla's turned it on in the fourth quarter. So
that's very true.
I'm definitely going to be watching that until it's over.
So we'll see what happens with the East. I personally think the Raptors still have something to prove because I believe they want to show that they can do it without oh my gosh. Kawhi. You know what I was going to say? I was trying to say someone else's name, and I was like, that's not the name. Kawhi. Thank you, teammate.
You're welcome.
I think they want to show that they can do it without Kawhi. So I don't think that we can sleep on them. Now, so for me, I'm going to go Raptors. I'm still going to go Raptors Bucks. I haven't paid enough attention, if I'm going to be honest, to the Celtics, but I do know that they are in the mix.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it pans out.
Who you got winning the whole thing?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know anymore because, like I said, but I'm going to go with the Cinderella story.
Me too.
Right? I'm
Portland.
going to Portland. I didn't say that on my last podcast, which was like a week or so ago.
Right.
But Portland was just heating up. I wasn't there yet. I couldn't completely be convinced that they could go all the way. But now I've seen them play a couple more games, and this seems to be consistent.
Right.
So
it does. It really does.
I'm sure that they can pull off a Cinderella story.
I think they can. And with that closes our show, ladies and gentlemen. It's been fun, Carita. A lot of fun. Big announcements tonight.
Really good. I mean, all the shows are good, but this is really good. This is really good.
Yes, indeed. And we thank you for listening to this show. It's a pleasure doing this for you guys, and it's also very awesome that you guys take the time and listen to us here at The Breakdown. Tell them where they can follow you at again. Even though we laid that out in the beginning, they need to know where they can follow you at.
You can follow me on all social media platforms at Carita C. Parks. You can also follow Double Take Sports. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and IG at DBL Take Sports.
You can follow me at NotBland21. You can see the work at sportsjourney.com. And of course, here at The Breakdown on the podcast, which you can find on all podcasting platforms. Again, we thank you so much. And this has been The Breakdown.